Hello! So, Cockspur have released the Phenom 100 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Actually, they released it earlier this weekend, but anybody who's been watching the release unfold knows that their web server pretty much, not so much melted down as burst into flames and burnt to the ground. So I think they've just about got a handle on it now. So people are able to actually go and buy the Phenom 100 now. I think they had about anywhere between 10 and 20 times more people purchasing it than they anticipated. So it just shows how popular Flight Simulator has become. So this is the Phenom 100. So let's have a look around it. If we get in close to the aircraft, we can come and see the quality of the modelling. I've had a look at it first thing this morning, and I have to say it's very, very good. So I'm impressed with it. So if we look around, it's in common with lots of modern jets, there's no seams anywhere. It's all moulded, but it's all modelled really nicely. Let's go out along the wing. A close look at some of these details to see how insane they've become with having to turn their attention to everything these days. So I think this has become fairly common in the simulator now, and we like, we continually say just how good these aircraft have become. But yeah, just look at the detail is just astonishing, really. So let's go and have a look around some of these linkages at the tail. I mean, this is things you never look at, or not, beyond the first look. You just sit in the cockpit for the rest of the time you ever fly the aeroplane. But when people first go and have a look at these aeroplanes, they like to see how well modelled they are. And you can see here, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? It's very, very well done. Okay, so if we come around to the cabin and have a look inside the aeroplane. Now I think, I can never remember what key it is you have to press to do this. Is it C, and then it becomes clickable? There we go. And then C again will allow us to look around. So it's actually got the toilet modelled, which is kind of funny, I guess. The tables don't work as far as I'm aware, but the door obviously does work. So we'll come back to that in a moment. Let's go and have a look around in the cockpit. So it's a thoroughly modern cockpit. So if we go and come in close to the instruments, you can see, or the controls, I should say, not instruments, because it's glass cockpit. You can see how well modelled it all is. It's very, very nicely done. I guess we're becoming a bit blasé about that these days, that, just how well modelled some of the airplanes are. So I'm using the drone camera to do that, so I apologise for flying through the walls now and again, but it's the easiest way to do this. Okay, so let's go and put the Xbox controller to one side, which is controlling the drone camera, and press the insert key, and we're now in our normal view, so we can close the doors. It's got nice sounds throughout. And we'll go and jump into the pilot seat. So you don't actually get much in the way of documentation with it at the moment. There is a document that comes with it in the installation directory, and there's also this startup card. There's nothing in the checklist within the simulator yet. So I've looked at the procedure card, which doesn't make an awful lot of sense. And it's also worth pointing out that the default views are not very useful. So that's control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, why 3 is sitting on the toilet is anybody's guess. 5, 6, 7. I guess you could use these, but 8, 9, they don't make a lot of sense. So what I've done, and I've detailed this in the procedure list I've set up, is I've made my own custom views. So I've got Alt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, which covers all the areas of the aeroplane, and I refer to those in the checklist I've written up, which is available via a link in the notes. Okay, so let's go and get the aeroplane started up. It's just worth pointing out where we're going to fly today. We are at Duxford, we're going to fly out via the Clacton and the Detling VORs and then back into Southend. So it's only about, 100 miles round trip. So it's not going to take very long at all. But it's just a bit of a proving flight to see how we get on with the aeroplane. Okay, so press Alt and 1 to go and look out the left door. Batteries 1 and 2 go to on. So we can click on the battery switches here. Generators 1 and 2 can go to auto. The bus tie can go to auto. The oxygen supply, we can turn it to PAX auto, and then we can push the plunger in, which makes a nice oxygen sound as it pressurizes. Then Alt and 6 will take us overhead. We'll go and put the nav light on, and then obviously we can set the internal lights as appropriate, so we can go and switch on the panel backlighting, and there's various things that we can turn on around the place. So then Alt and 2 will take us back down to the pilot instrument panel, and then we go and turn the pumps to auto. And the hydraulic pump section to auto. And ELT to armed. So I've noticed this is reversed. You have to actually click down to make it go up, so that's a bit of a bug in the first version of the airplane, but this is the 1.0 version. If you're wondering, I'm not sure what ELT stands for. I did note earlier and I haven't written in my notes. The PAX signs on the far left, we're going to set them to PEB belts. PEB means passenger electronic devices. PED, sorry, passenger electronic devices. So it's, telling people put your phone away. So heating section on the right, we can set the ADS to auto. So again, I looked up what ADS means. It's air data system, so that's your pitot heat essentially. So over on the co-pilot side, which is Alt and 4, we can go to the pressurization section here, put bleed to both, put mode to auto. See, yeah, okay, so it's a bit, the labelling is a bit odd in places, so up is auto. Air conditioning in the middle, mode to auto, so we do that here. Navigation display, so Alt 7 takes us over to the navigation display in the middle, and we're going to go and program our flight plan. So I have to remember how the navigation display works now. So the nice thing about this airplane, actually I've got the wrong view there, haven't I? So did I say Alt and 7 for that? I meant Alt and 8. So let's go and release that. Go to the flight plan page. There we go. That's better. We'll go and remove that's the pilot display. So I need to fix that in my notes. So something I noticed that is worth showing you, actually, if I view it from this angle, is the keypads work, and they work really nicely, along with all of the controls obviously around the displays. So we're going from, let's go and have a look at our notes, EGSU to EGMC. So let's get that in there. So we can press in the FMS knob to put the focus in there, and then we can roll down. So EGSU. So we can just type without starting to roll any knobs to put the focus in. We can put EGSU directly in and press enter. Then we can choose the runway. So again, you can either use the FMS knob here, or we can use the big one here. And Duxford runway 6 right we're looking for. So if we go and go for 6 right and press enter, and then press enter again to accept, and then roll down to the destination, and we're going to EGMC Southend, and we're looking for runway 05 at Southend. So EGMC at Southend is correct. Press enter, and then we can roll the inner knob to choose runway 5, so outer knob will go down to 5, and just press enter and enter again. Okay, so then while we are en route, we are going to go via Clacton, so CLN, and then Detling, DET. Okay, so let's just make this a little bit smaller so we can see everything, and get rid of that out of the way, and get rid of that out of the way. sometimes a struggle to see everything in little nav map, isn't it? So CLN and DET are our en route waypoints, so we roll the outer knob to move the focus. So CLN, Clacton, perfect, enter, and then DET, Detling, perfect. Okay, so when we approach Clacton, we want to do the procedure to come into it, don't we? So we can either do that via, now I'm going to have to try and remember now how this works. Menu, no, that won't do it. I think we have to go to proc. So clear out of there, clear out of here. Oh no, cancel that. Oh, I think we just do clear again, can't we? There we go. So flight plan gets rid of that. Sorry if I'm a little bit rusty with this. So procedure, here we go. Select the approach. So press enter. ILS for 05, which is absolutely what we want to do. Press enter. And we'll just use vectors. We're not using any transitions. Minimums we're not worried about. And enter. And then roll down to load and enter. And yes. And that will put it into our flight plan, hopefully. So it's doing it from CI05. So that's the same as little navmap has done it, look. So without any transitions, it's going to be vectoring us straight from Detling over to the entrance in to the approach. Okay, so we can go and press flight plan again to get rid of that out of the way. We might want to do some vectoring after takeoff, because if you'll notice on little nav map I've pushed us out a little way, but we can take no notice of that and we'll just join the track after takeoff. Okay, so after we've done our flight plan, we're going to press Alt and 5 to show the screen here. I'm just going to change my, or update my written procedure while we're looking at it. So we're going to press B to shortcut calibrating the altimeters, and then we're going to go to the master control panel at the top here and preset what we want to do for takeoff. So if we go and have a little look at Duxford, we're going to be taking off runway 06, so we want 57 degrees on the heading. So you can see the heading bug buzzing around that, so we just want that on 57. And we'll set the course to the same for the moment. But we're not going to leave it there, because if you notice it's in localizer mode at the moment, the CDI mode. We're going to change the CDI to GPS because we'll be flying via GPS. We're going to set our initial cruise altitude, so we're going to go straight up to 18,000 feet. So this is one of my only criticisms of the aircraft so far, is there's no doubling of the altitude select speed, so it takes a long time to select your altitude if you're going up to any sort of significant altitude. Another way to do it is just to hold the mouse button on, and then you can move the mouse around while you're holding it down and just wait for the number to increase on the altitude. So just for our purposes today, we'll just go up to say 12,000 feet maybe, or maybe 15. There we go, 15,000 feet. We'll select the nav modes as required, so we'll go nav, and it say GPS and roll hold, but obviously once we're close to the track it will just go to GPS. We have to set our climb parameters, so we can set speed and flight level change, so we can do that now. Set flight level change, but we also set our target airspeed. So we'll say we'll climb out at perhaps 200 knots or 180 maybe. Let's try that. Okay, so then we can start engines. We don't need to push back here. We're just on the flight line at Duxford, so we don't need to push back. Let's go and start our engines. So Alt 3 takes us down to the pedestal. We put the ignition on auto, both sides, and then we roll round to start on both engines, and then we can pretty much monitor things happening. So N1 is coming up. So if we have a listen inside, it's a noisy so-and-so. So yeah, I'm going to be struggling to talk over the top of that, I think. So engines have come up straight away, pretty much. So then overhead we can go and turn the taxi lights on and go and taxi out to the runway. So let's go and put the head tracking on at this point. So straighten it up, come off the parking brake, and you will see straight away what we may do. Yeah, we need a small amount of thrust to get us rolling, but then idle is, I think, enough to keep it rolling. Obviously I'm going to get a bit of a move on because we've got quite a long taxi. So you can see in terms of the guidance systems and stuff, it's got the G1000s all right the way across the cockpit. As I noted earlier, the checklist inside the aircraft isn't really that great, but it may be accurate to the real thing though, for all I know. Very quiet inside, isn't it? It won't remain quiet once we turn the engines up, of course, but you'll get to hear that in a moment. Duxford's really nicely modelled, isn't it? This is the free Duxford that's available from FlightSim.2. It's very good. You've got this whole row of museum aircraft alongside the taxiway. I think Steph Drury went there, that has the YouTube channel, the Australian guy. I think he went to visit here while he was doing his flights around the UK recently. It was really interesting seeing his experience of visiting the airspaces around here and how different how different it was to his native experience at home of flying. It's a very good channel if you've not heard of him. Okay, let's go out towards the runway. So we're going to set flaps for takeoff. Okay, what's happened to the flap lever? I'm just going to hold us a stop for a moment, and I'm going to pull the USB controller. I've seen this happen before. I've just pulled out my throttle quadrant and I'm plugging it back in again. And now it's working. We should get 5 degrees flaps on the first notch on the Airbus quadrant. Let's just watch that happen. Yeah, there we go. So we have a caution showing up, and there's nothing there, so that might be a little bit of a bug, who knows. So back off the parking brake, ease the throttles forwards. You can hear that gentle rumble behind us. You'll hear it a lot louder in a moment. These engines are remarkably quiet at idle, but when you open them up you certainly know about it. If you're wondering about the puddles, it's been horrendous weather recently here, and it's been raining today on and off as well. Okay, so I'm just going to bring us to a stop on the runway and check my checklist to see what I had left to do. So we've got obviously the landing and the strobe lights. So control 5 was it? I can't remember my own keys now. There we go. Strobe lights and landing lights on, and then we'll turn the head tracking back on. Actually, we'll do this without head tracking just so it remains nice and stable for you, so you can See the experience. Just holding the centre line with a little bit of rudder. There's a little bit of a crosswind going on, not much. Okay, begin rotation. And we're up nice and smoothly. So let's put that head tracking back on. Gear up. Flaps up. And we're coming up through 500 feet. 6, 7, 800 feet. And autopilot is on. So let's see what it does. Going to go flight level change. We already did that, didn't we? So it's already going for the climb profile, so it's remarkably smooth. And it's already turning right to get onto our track. So if we look at the map here, yeah, it's going. Remember, this will not have. It's actually doing, you know, the direct track between Duxford and Clacton. So it's trying to cut across onto it. Should we have a look at that from outside, see how it's getting on? I am hugely impressed with this. It's very good. Okay, so we'll be coming up through 6,000 feet in a minute. I suspect 6,000 feet is the transition altitude. It usually is this part of the world. So we'll pretend it is for our purposes and go back to 2992 on the barometric pressure. So there we go. So baro comes down to 2992 now. Again, it's quite slow to change these things. And then our next thing to do is at 10,000 feet go and switch the landing lights back off. So you can see the aeroplane is straightening up on its route here. So if we increase the range, you can see our track takes us out to Clacton and then off across the countryside. So we're climbing at just over 3,000 feet a minute at full throttle. Let's go and pull this back to climb. So we were going at max there. So that's the climb setting, which would be 84% on N1. So it's holding about, we're holding 180 knots there. Obviously we're in speed mode, so we could, you know, manipulate the climb rate if we wanted to, just by either slowing down or we could ask for faster. So if we went for 250 knots, for example. Let's see how that influences the climb rate. So it's massively favouring the acceleration, but it's still climbing gently. So we've just gone above 10,000 feet, so while we're doing that, let's go and turn those landing lights off. I have to say, I really like this aeroplane. Really like it. So it seems frozen there for a moment. It's just woken up. I think this is fantastic, this aeroplane. It's not study level, but then you weren't going to expect it to be. It's only about £24 or €24, I think it's €25. I think it's really, really nice. It's worth pointing out I haven't landed it yet. All I've done so far is worked on the checklists and had a little bit of a test of firing it up earlier on. I've not actually flown it properly, not landed it. So we have got a velocity vector, which is interesting. I've never noticed that before on a G1000. So you can see we're crabbing slightly through the crosswind. You can see that reflected on the map here. So we're off, we're pointing slightly to the left of our track. You can see that as well on the HSI. Obviously this is the stock G1000, the working title version of it, so you get all the usual options that you'd expect to find. So yeah, it's pretty good. Although this is interesting that these don't line up. So if we go Alt 2, they kind of line up if you see them from above. They don't exactly line up with the buttons, which could be a hindrance to you. So all I was looking for was to turn the terrain off, so you don't have to have that on display if you don't want to. Yeah, I guess it depends on your point of view. If you were at the right distance from this, let's see if we can play with this. They start to line up. You have to be right on top of it for them to make sense. It's almost like the buttons are a little bit narrower track than the indicators on the screens. Never noticed that before. Interesting. Okay, we're just coming out towards Clacton, and we're still coming up to 15,000 feet, climbing at 9,000 feet a minute. Let's go and have a look at our plan. So we're going to turn back from Clacton, back down towards Detling. So now we're nearing cruise altitude. We could pull the throttles back further to max cruise, as it calls it. We'll continue on climbing at the moment. Be interesting to see if we get any ice build-up on the descent into Southend. So let's go and see what the weather's doing at Southend. 0 degrees, dew point, temperature's 4 degrees, so we might avoid it actually. Depends what it's doing at altitude though, doesn't it? Looking at this in terms of the numbers on the engines, you get the fuel flow, the electrical generation, you get the landing gear indicators. Got the. Do we get the new engine? No, we don't. Oh, that's a shame. There should be a new engine system, but maybe that's only for propeller aircraft, or for turbines. Not turbines. What am I talking about? Combustion engines. You get that, or for turboprops. Obviously it doesn't work for a jet plane, that's a shame. Okay, so the aircraft should start turning right in a few moments, and we'll carry on down towards Detling. There it goes. So while we're making this next leg, let's have a play with doing altitude select and come down to say 10,000 feet. Even though we're just approaching our initial target, which was 15, doesn't really matter. So if we were to do a flight level change, for example, we've got this set to 250 knots, remember. And if we pull the throttles back, it's dropping the nose to get to 250. And the altitude is dropping. It's struggling to hold the speed, but that's not unusual in the simulator. It's holding the track really nicely though. Very, very good. we're running the engines. As you can see here, the N1 percentage is just under 70%. That's with the throttles pulled back to 50% of their full travel. And now we're heading down towards the Detling VOR. So on this leg, you can see up here, we've got 6 minutes to run until we get there. Shouldn't take too long at all. Cross it over on the primary flight display, you get the distance. 30 miles to run at 250 knots. So again, this is really just a proving flight to see how it goes. I guess some people might want me to see, or want to see me take it off autopilot and put it through its paces a little bit, so should we try that while we're flying along? That might be good as well to see how it reacquires the track if we've left the track. So I'm going to go and turn the autopilot off, so you can see it's flashing away there. So will that extinguish once it's finished flashing? Yes it does, good. Okay, so let's go and press F12 to straighten up my head tracking. Okay, so max roll rate. It's pretty good. I love how the refresh on the screens is not as fast as looking outside, which it wouldn't be. And what about stalling? What happens if we stall it? So let's pull the throttles back to idle. Nose up. So we're just watching what's going to go and happen here. So 12,000 feet. Holding 10 degrees nose up. Feeding in more and more backstick. So we get a landing gear annunciation. So I'm now at, I'm pulling it all the way back to maximum backstick. 80 knots, 70 knots. No stall buzzer. Interesting. Interesting. So you don't get an audible stall warning. So let's go back to autopilot and let it take over, flying us on the track. Remember we had the speed set for 253 knots, 250 knots. So it's going to accelerate downhill while going towards 10,000 feet. So you can see there's our final destination is Southend. So if we go and actually look outside this side of the aircraft, can we? Oh, it's a bit foggy down there probably. Screen just coming up now. It's probably underneath that cloud. Let's see if we can see it from outside. It's over there, isn't it? Right behind the cloud. Okay, how are we doing? As you can see, here's where we're going to vector off back towards the runway. If we go and have a look on that flight plan, it's probably got vectors in there, which would make total sense because it won't know. Yeah, it's yellow here, look. It won't know how to get from Detling into the flight plan, so we'll be going heading mode at that point. So we're going to bring ourselves back down. We want to be 3,000 feet by the time we get to here, so we'll start going for 3,000 feet. So oops, let me just drop the altitude target down to 3,000. To get there at some point today. Like I said, these rollers take quite a while. Okay, before we do anything, we'll go and put the landing lights on to descend below 10,000 feet. We'll hit flight level change, and we'll... Interesting, when I hit that, it set the speed bug. That's fascinating. Okay, these are the click areas for these, or sorry, the target areas for the mouse. They're quite relaxed. So if I set it to 250 knots, that will allow us to descend quite quickly. So you can see it's coming down 5,000 feet a minute, which is a bit more than we need. So we can control that obviously with thrust. And we're going to align the heading bug, so we can click the middle of the heading bug to make that happen. We're going to go to heading mode now. So in heading mode on the autopilot, we'll fly through Detling and then track right. So giving ourselves room to turn, probably want to be going 330 degrees or so. Okay, so let's try that now. Oops. See what I mean about that? You only get a very small area that the mouse is operable within, or maybe I'm just going too close to the actual knob at the time I do it. Okay, so we need to go and get the ILS tuned in, so 11135, 53 degrees on the course. So we'll do the course first, 53 degrees. We have to come off of there, so here we go, course. We have to go to, sorry, I mean we have to go to localize from the CDI. 53 degrees, so there's 53 degrees, so that's now the runway direction relative to us. And we want 111.35 on the nav radio, which is already tuned in. So that must have come across from programming the route, I guess. Notice we have frozen up. I thought that might happen. So we can remove the yoke while we're doing this and go and turn on the windshield heating. Go and turn on the engine and wing stab heating as well, just to be safe. See, we're rolling in. We're going to pull the speed back. Whoops, if again, look, I put the mouse accidentally over the middle and didn't like it. No, I don't think this has spoilers. Let's find out. No, it doesn't. So we're waiting for the speed to bleed off. We're at 3,500 feet, aiming for 3,000. We're below the glide slope. We do have approach mode. Do we have approach mode? Oh, actually, maybe we don't. Yes, we do. There's the button there. The simulator's just frozen again. Oh, that winds me up. I can't wait for Flight Sim 2024 when they hopefully fix some of these issues. Got an advisory come up, and there's nothing in it again. So there's a few things in this that are a little bit ropey, but it's not too bad. Again, because of the lack of documentation, I don't think it's on the card either. I don't know if there's any reference speeds for the flaps. No, there aren't. And there's certainly nothing in the documentation for it, the written documentation. So we're going to start doing our turn, and just to make the turn a little bit more shallow really. So we're 200 knots now. Is this going to continue down for us? Flight level change. I'll bring the range in on the navigation display so we can see the runway out there. We are 11 miles out. Crossed over, while I was busy messing around there, we've crossed over the runway centre line. Not doing a great job of this at the moment. Okay, let's go for approach mode and see what it does. So it's captured. Let's straighten ourselves up in the cockpit. Do we get an outside air temperature on the screen here? Not sure we do. I think you have to go through various screens to see it normally. I know there's a way of pulling it up via the NextRad type data, but okay, you can see the runway in the distance now, and we've missed the glide slope, so we're going to come off the autopilot. And land manually. Okay, so head tracking is on. Engines are idle. We're slow enough now to put the gear down, which will give us some drag, which will be good. So let's descend down onto the glide slope. Here it comes. Flaps. Let's look to stabilise the speed now. The flaps are taking a long time to travel. Now, is that because of speed, or is there something wrong? Nope, they're just taking a very long time to travel. 30 degrees. There we go, 36 degrees on the flaps. So while looking at the flaps, we've gone below the glide slope and wandered off to one side. Just fly level for a moment, back into the glide slope. Okay, there we go. Track the glide slope downwards. It's interesting, this thing's quite happy at full flaps doing 100 knots. Still very manoeuvrable at that. You know, the aileron response is very good. The elevator response as well, even at 100 knots, is good. Which you'd expect with such a small aircraft, to be honest. turbulence quite a lot. Let's hold it above the runway and find out when it runs out of lift. So it's still going at 80 knots, look. I'm going to have to put it down soon because we're going to run out of runway. It's just running out there. It's just gently touched down. So at 70 knots, it was still going. So, sorry for treating this as a test flight, but that's pretty much how I behave most of the time. I see everything as a testing opportunity. So yeah, those flaps do take a while to retreat. It's quite unnerving. Okay, so we slow down, just nip overhead and turn those strobe lights back off and go back to taxi lights and taxi in. Welcome to Southend. Whoa, it doesn't like turning anything above walking pace really. Bring it in here and stand one right in front of the control tower. Lovely looking plane, isn't it? So, park and brake on, and I presume we just turn ignition off, do we? Stop the engines even. So, let's have a look around and see what we have to do in what order. So the hydraulic pumps can come back off, the ELT can be set to... It was on test reset, wasn't it? That's interesting. So, pumps can come off. The shield heating can come off. The probe heats, that's essentially probe heats, can come off. Ice protection off. Wing stabilizer heating off. I think we've done everything there. Then overhead. Lights off. And then in the door we've got the generators off. Bus tie. It's interesting that that's usually on open when you get into the aircraft and you put it to auto, but anyway. So then the batteries, oh actually before we do all the batteries, can we influence that? Crew only, I guess you would put that back to and pull the oxygen up and turn the other battery off again. And then obviously you can scoot around, and if you hit the red lever the door will unlock and you can get out. So there we go. Let's see if we can get a view of it without a road cone in the way. The Phenom 100 in Microsoft Flight Simulator by Cockspur. I think it's really great. It's not study level, and you kind of saw that with landing there. It was floating a bit more than you might imagine. It wasn't bleeding off speed, but again, these things could get updated and tweaked. But it may be accurate. That may be how the real aeroplane really is. So with a small amount of positive thrust, and it was, you know, willing to carry on barreling along the runway. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'll see you again soon. I think that was a good first look at the Phenom.